The conference room smelled like recycled air and diplomatic desperation. Commander Vekthar of the Galactic Council sat at the obsidian table, his three eyes blinking in sequence as he reviewed the datapad for the 7th time. The numbers hadn't changed. They never did. But somehow, staring at them made the impossible situation feel slightly less catastrophic. Slightly. "So let me get this straight," he said, his mandibles clicking together in what passed for a resigned sigh among his people. The humans sent one representative, singular, to negotiate the terms of their species joining the Galactic Council. "Correct, Commander," replied his aide, a nervous Tellurian named Kip, who had the unfortunate habit of sweating acid when anxious. The table was already developing small pits where droplets had fallen. Vekthar leaned back in his chair, which groaned under his bulk. "And this representative? Did they send a military general? A decorated war hero? Perhaps their most cunning political strategist?" Kip consulted his own datapad, his gills fluttering. "According to the manifest, they sent, a woman named Iris Callahan. She's listed as and I quote, freelance consultant with extensive experience in hostile negotiations." "Freelance consultant, yes, sir. For the most important diplomatic meeting in their planet's history." "It appears so, sir." Vekthar's center eye twitched. In his 200 years of service to the Galactic Council, he'd dealt with the Chromax hive mind, negotiated peace with the Silicon Collective, and once convinced a sentient black hole to relocate away from a populated sector. But humans? Humans were something else entirely. They'd appeared on the galactic stage only 15 cycles ago, broadcasting their existence with all the subtlety of a supernova. Most species spent centuries cautiously exploring their local star cluster before announcing themselves to the wider universe. Not humans. They'd detected the Council's monitoring stations and immediately sent a message that roughly translated to, "Hey there, we noticed you noticing us. Want to talk?" The audacity had been refreshing, also mildly terrifying. Since then, intelligence reports had painted a picture of a species that was equal parts brilliant and utterly insane. They'd developed faster-than-light travel through a method that every physicist in the galaxy had dismissed as theoretically impossible. When asked how they'd achieved it, the human scientist had shrugged and said something about not knowing it was impossible, so we just did it anyway. They'd also, in the span of just 15 cycles, colonized 17 planets in their local sector, established trade routes with 3 neighboring species, and accidentally started 2 wars by completely misunderstanding diplomatic protocols. Both wars had been resolved when the humans realized their mistake, apologized profusely, and then somehow befriended the very species they'd been fighting. It was exhausting just reading the reports. The door to the conference room hissed open, and Vekthar straightened in his chair, preparing himself for whatever fresh madness was about to walk through. What walked through was not what he expected. Iris Callahan stood perhaps 1.6 meters tall, which made her average height for a human female. She had dark hair pulled back in what his cultural database identified as a ponytail, and she wore a simple black suit that looked simultaneously professional and somehow dangerous. But it was her eyes that caught his attention. Green, sharp. The kind of eyes that had seen things and decided those things weren't going to stop her. She walked into the room like she owned it, pulling a small wheeled case behind her. "Commander Vekthar, I presume?" She extended her hand in the human greeting gesture. Vekthar rose, towering over her by at least half a meter, and carefully took her hand. Human skin was surprisingly warm compared to his species. "Miss Callahan, welcome to Station Apex. I trust your journey was comfortable. The coffee on your ship was terrible, but otherwise, can't complain. She released his hand and looked around the room. Nice place. Very, imposing black furniture and mood lighting. Really sets the tone for trust and cooperation. Was that sarcasm? Vekthar's translator implant wasn't always accurate with human idioms. Please, sit. He gestured to a chair that had been specially calibrated for human physiology. Can we offer you refreshment? We have a selection of beverages from across the galaxy. Do you have whiskey? We would need to consult our inventory. Then I'll stick with water, room temperature, not that weird filtered stuff that tastes like metal. She sat down, crossed her legs, and pulled a data pad from her case. So, shall we get started? I've got a transport back to Earth scheduled in 48 hours, and I'd like to have this wrapped up by then. Kip's gills fluttered so fast, they created a small breeze. Miss Callahan, these negotiations typically take several months. She looked at him like he'd just suggested they count grains of sand for fun. Do they? That seems inefficient. Why don't we try something radical and just, be honest with each other about what we want? Might save time. Vekthar felt a headache forming behind his center eye. Miss Callahan, the process of joining the Galactic Council is complex. There are security protocols, trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, and military alliances to consider. We cannot simply rush through them. Can't we? She tapped her data pad, and a holographic display appeared above the table. Let's start with what you really want from this meeting. You want humanity to join the Council because we've developed technology you're interested in. Specifically, our faster-than-light drive and our adaptive AI systems. You're also concerned about us being an unaligned species operating in Council space because we keep accidentally causing diplomatic incidents. She wasn't wrong. Vekthar remained silent. Iris continued, What you don't want is to give us full Council membership with all the benefits, because we're new, unpredictable, and you're not sure we won't immediately do something catastrophically stupid. Fair assessment? I wouldn't phrase it quite so, bluntly. But I'm not wrong. You are not incorrect. Great. So here's what humanity wants. She pulled up another display. We want access to Council technology, specifically medical advances and energy systems. We want protection under Council law so we don't get invaded by every species with an armada and an attitude problem. And we want a seat at the big table when decisions are made that affect our space. These are substantial requests. They're also fair. You get our technology and cooperation. We get legitimacy and security. Everyone wins. She leaned forward. Unless you're planning to lowball us, in which case this is going to be a very short conversation, and you'll spend the next decade dealing with humanity as an independent wild card in your perfectly organized galaxy. The room fell silent, except for the faint hum of the station's life support systems. Vekthar studied the human woman. There was something about her calm confidence that was both impressive and deeply unsettling. She'd summarized in 2 minutes what his team had spent weeks analyzing, and she'd done it while making it clear that walking away was always an option for her. Humans called it leverage. He called it mildly threatening. Miss Callahan, he said carefully, you seem to be under the impression that this is a simple transaction. Isn't it? There are considerable concerns about humanity's, shall we say, impulsiveness. Your species has a documented history of making decisions that seem reasonable to you but appear borderline suicidal to outside observers. She smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. You mean like when we strapped ourselves to controlled explosions to reach our moon before we had proper computers? Or when we split the atom without really thinking through all the implications? Or maybe you're talking about how we've survived ice ages, plagues, and multiple near-extinction events through sheer stubborn refusal to die? All of those, yes. Commander, let me tell you something about humans. She stood up, walked to the window overlooking the station's docking bay, and gazed out at the stars. We're not fearless. We're absolutely terrified most of the time. But we learned a long time ago that being scared doesn't mean you stop moving forward. It means you move forward while being scared. We don't survive because we're cautious. We survive because when faced with extinction, our species looks death in the eye and says, "Not today." She turned back to face him. You want guarantees that we won't do anything dangerous or unpredictable? I can't give you that. No one can. What I can tell you is that when we make mistakes, we own them, learn from them, and try not to make the same one twice. And when we commit to something, we're all in. That's not impulsiveness. That's determination. Vekthar found himself reconsidering his initial assessment. This woman wasn't just confident. She understood exactly what the Council feared about humanity and was addressing it head-on. No diplomatic doublespeak, no careful evasions, just direct, honest communication. It was refreshing, also slightly terrifying. Your passion is noted, Miss Callahan. However, passion alone does not allay concerns about galactic stability. Then let's talk specifics. She returned to her seat. What would it take for the Council to feel comfortable with humanity as a member? Finally, they were getting somewhere. Vekthar pulled up his own display. There are several requirements. First, humanity would need to demonstrate the ability to follow Council protocols without, creative reinterpretation. You mean the incident with the Valesian trade delegation? Among others, Iris winced. In our defense, we genuinely didn't know that showing someone the bottoms of your feet was considered a declaration of blood feud. The translation matrix didn't catch that nuance. You then made it worse by trying to apologize with what you thought was a peace offering. How were we supposed to know that flowers are basically corpses on their planet? We were trying to be nice. You gave them a bouquet of what they perceived as severed heads. Okay, yes, in retrospect, that was bad. But we fixed it. We held a 12-hour feast in their honor and let them lecture us about proper etiquette. They left happy. Kip spoke up, his voice trembling slightly. They left threatening to return with their battle fleet. But they didn't, did they? Because by the end of the feast, we were friends. That's my point. Humans make mistakes, but we're really good at making up for them. Vekthar wasn't sure if he wanted to laugh or weep. Miss Callahan, the Council requires more than just the ability to apologize after causing diplomatic disasters. We need assurance that such disasters won't happen in the first place. Then give us better translation software, and maybe a cultural liaison who can stop us before we accidentally insult someone's ancestors. We're willing to learn. We just need guidance. She had an answer for everything. Vekthar moved to his next point. There's also the matter of military capability. The Council needs to understand the full extent of humanity's defensive and offensive capabilities. No. I beg your pardon? I said no. We're not giving you complete access to our military intelligence. Would you give us yours? That's different. We're an established alliance with centuries of cooperation. And we're a new species trying to join said alliance. Which means we need to maintain some strategic independence until we're sure you're trustworthy. She held up a hand before he could protest. Look, we'll share what's reasonable. defensive capabilities, fleet numbers, general technological level. But you don't get access to our weapons research or classified installations. Not yet. Earn our trust first. The audacity was breathtaking. Vecthar felt his mandibles clicking rapidly. Miss Callahan, you do realize that you're negotiating from a position of relative weakness? Humanity has 17 colonies and a small fleet. The Council has thousands of worlds and military might beyond your comprehension. True, but you need us more than we need you. Excuse me? She stood up again, and Vecthar noticed that despite her small stature, she somehow commanded the entire room. Commander, be honest. Why did the Council reach out to humanity for membership talks? Because we're so small and unthreatening? Or because every intelligence report you've received indicates that we're growing faster than any species in recorded history, and you'd rather have us inside your alliance than operating independently? Silence. You're afraid, Iris continued, her voice softer now, but no less intense. Not of what we are now, of what we might become. You've seen species rise and fall. You've watched civilizations tear themselves apart or conquer everything around them. And you've noticed that humans have the potential to go either way. So you're trying to bring us into the fold, while we're still young enough to be shaped by Council values. She walked around the table, stopping directly in front of Vecthar. Here's the thing. We know that, and we're okay with it. We'd rather be part of something bigger than ourselves. We'd rather learn from species who've been navigating the galaxy for millennia. But we're not going to subjugate ourselves or give up our autonomy to do it. We're offering partnership. Take it or leave it. Vecthar stared down at this human woman who barely reached his chest and realized something profound. They'd expected humanity to send a supplicant, someone eager to please and willing to accept whatever terms were offered. Instead, they'd sent a negotiator who understood exactly what both sides wanted and wasn't afraid to call out the Council's motivations. It was, in a word, brilliant. It was also going to make this negotiation far more complicated than he'd anticipated. You're quite the strategist, Miss Callahan. I'm a realist, Commander. I don't believe in pretending things are what they're not. Wastes everyone's time. Very well, let's discuss your terms in more detail, but I should warn you, the Council will not be easily swayed. She smiled that dangerous smile again. Good. I'd be disappointed if they were. And just like that, Vecthar knew this was going to be a very long 48 hours. 26 hours into negotiations, and Vecthar had developed a newfound respect for strong sedatives. Not that he could take any. Protocol demanded he remain sharp during Council discussions. But the temptation was real, achingly real. Iris Callahan sat across from him, looking exactly as fresh as she had when she'd arrived. Meanwhile, Vecthar had cycled through 3 aids, consumed enough stimulants to keep a small army awake, and seriously questioned his career choices. The woman was relentless. Section 47, subsection 9, Iris said, highlighting another clause on the holographic display. This gives the Council authority to inspect any human facility without prior notice. Hard pass. Vecthar's leftmost eye twitched. Miss Callahan, we've been over this. Inspection rights are standard for all member species. With 72 hours advance notice, according to Section 12 of your own charter. This clause contradicts that, so either it's a typo or you're testing to see if I'm actually reading this thing. She looked up, one eyebrow raised. I am, by the way. All 9,000 pages of it. You cannot have read the entire membership treaty since yesterday. Speed reading. It's a useful skill when you spend half your life reviewing contracts. She made a gesture on her pad, and the clause turned red. Fix it, or it stays on the rejection list. Kip, who had somehow survived all 26 hours, despite looking like he might dissolve into a puddle of nervous sweat, cleared his throat. Perhaps we could take a break. The meal period begins in 15 minutes. Excellent idea, Vekthar said, grateful for the interruption. Miss Callahan, would you join us in the dining hall? We've arranged for human-compatible cuisine. Iris stretched, her spine making several disturbing popping sounds. Sure, but I'm not eating anything that's still moving. Learned that lesson on Proxima Station. The food will be thoroughly deceased, I assure you. The dining hall was a massive space designed to accommodate dozens of species simultaneously. Environmental bubbles dotted the room, each containing atmosphere suitable for different biological requirements. Vekthar led Iris to a section calibrated for oxygen-breathing species with similar pressure needs. A serving drone approached with what the kitchen staff had assured him was an acceptable human meal. Iris looked at the plate with barely concealed suspicion. What is this supposed to be? Our database indicated humans enjoy something called a hamburger. This is our interpretation. She poked at the circular protein disk with her utensil. Your database needs updating. This looks like someone described it a burger to an alien who'd never seen food before. She took a small bite and immediately made a face that suggested mild poisoning. Tastes like it too. No offense. None taken. I will note the culinary failure in my report. You've got any of those ration bars from the transport ship? Those were actually decent. Vekthar summoned the drone back and requested basic rations. While they waited, other council members began filtering into the dining hall news of the human negotiator had spread throughout the station, and curiosity was apparently stronger than diplomatic protocol. A towering Kryn warrior approached their table, her forearms crossed in what might have been either greeting or challenge. So this is the human everyone speaks of. You appear small. I get that a lot, Iris replied without looking up from her datapad. She'd started reviewing documents again, even while waiting for food. You appear tall. Guess we both made observations. The Kryn's facial plates shifted in what Vekthar recognized as surprised amusement. I am General Zara of the Kryn Defense Fleet. Your species interests me. You fight with cunning rather than strength. We fight with whatever works. Sometimes that's cunning. Sometimes that's just hitting things really hard until they stop being a problem. Iris finally looked up. You're the one who defeated the Scourge invasion at Keltar Prime, right? Read about that battle. The pincer movement through the asteroid field was inspired. Zara's plates shifted again, this time definitely showing pleasure. You study military history? When it's interesting, yeah. That battle's taught at our war colleges now as an example of tactical excellence. Your species has war colleges? Several. We take conflict pretty seriously. Comes from spending most of our history fighting each other. Iris accepted the ration bar from the returning drone and tore open the package. We figured if we had to fight, we should at least get good at it. An honest assessment. I approve. Zara settled into a chair that groaned under her mass. Tell me, human, why does your world send one negotiator to face the entire council? It seems tactically unsound. Does it? I'd argue sending a whole delegation would signal desperation or inexperience. One person says confidence. Iris bit into the ration bar. Plus, committees are terrible at making decisions. Too many voices, too much compromise. You end up with solutions that satisfy everyone and help no one. Vekthar found himself nodding despite his exhaustion. She wasn't wrong. A Solarian diplomat drifted over, their crystalline body refracting the ambient light into rainbow patterns. Forgiveness for interruption. This one carries curiosity about human negotiation style. Very direct. Very unusual. Life's too short for dancing around the point, Iris said. You want something, I want something. Let's figure out how everyone gets what they need. If we can't, we part as friends and try again later. But what if agreement proves impossible? The Solarian asked. Then it does. Not everything has to end in a deal. Sometimes the best negotiation is the one where both sides realize they're not compatible and walk away before anyone gets hurt. She finished her ration bar and pulled up her datapad again. Which brings me to Section 51, the Technology Sharing Agreement. We need to talk about this. Vecthar sighed. The break had lasted all of 10 minutes. 6 hours later, they were back in the conference room. The delegation had grown. Word had spread that the human negotiator was actually making progress, and various council members wanted to observe or participate. Representative Cole of the Merchant Guild leaned forward, his proboscis quivering. The human proposes a graduated technology exchange. First cycle, basic medical and energy systems. Second cycle, advanced manufacturing. Third cycle, defensive technologies. Each phase contingent on successful integration of previous phase. Exactly, Iris confirmed. You're worried we'll take your tech and do something stupid with it. Fair concern. This way, we prove we can handle each level before moving to the next. And what does the Council receive in this arrangement? Asked Ambassador Threll, a reptilian species known for their financial acumen. Immediate access to our faster-than-light drive specifications. Not the full implementation, but enough to replicate the basic function. Also our adaptive AI research, minus the military applications. Iris pulled up schematics. The AI alone is worth what we're asking for. Your computing systems are powerful but rigid. Ours learn and adapt in real time. Combined with your processing power, you'd have something revolutionary. The room erupted in overlapping conversations. Different species argued, calculated, postured. Vecthar let them talk. This was actually progress. Finally, after hours of tedious clause-by-clause review, they were discussing substantive exchange. Zara's voice cut through the chatter. The human offers valuable technology, but retains military applications. This suggests preparation for conflict. Why? Iris met the general's gaze without flinching. Because we are not idiots. We're joining a galactic alliance, not surrendering our sovereignty. Every species here maintains their own military forces. You expect us to do less? Other species have centuries of proven cooperation. And we'll build that same trust over time. But trust is earned, not demanded. You want humanity as an ally? Then treat us like one, not like a conquered territory. Bold words for such a small species. Size isn't everything, General. Ask the bacteria that nearly wiped out humanity during the plague years. Tiny organisms, massive impact. Iris stood up, walking to the holographic display of Council space. Look, I understand your hesitation. You've built something remarkable here. Thousands of species coexisting, mostly peacefully, sharing resources and knowledge. It's impressive, actually inspiring. She turned back to face the assembly. But it's also fragile. You know it is. That's why you have all these protocols and safeguards. You're trying to protect what you've built. I respect that. Humanity respects that. We're not looking to tear anything down. We just want a place at the table where we can contribute and grow alongside everyone else." Ambassador Threll's forked tongue flickered. Pretty speech, but words cost nothing. Actions prove intent. "You're absolutely right. So let's talk actions." Iris pulled up a new document. "Humanity proposes a trial membership, 5 cycles. During that time, we operate under provisional status, full obligations, limited benefits. We prove we can follow council law, respect diplomatic protocols, contribute to collective defense, and integrate our technology responsibly. After 5 cycles, the council votes on full membership. If we've failed to meet expectations, we part ways with no hard feelings." The room went quiet. Vekthar blinked all 3 eyes in sequence. It was brilliant. A trial period addressed the council's primary concern about human unpredictability, while giving humanity a chance to prove themselves. Low risk for the council, clear path forward for humanity. "This is acceptable framework," the Solarian diplomat chimed. "Allows evaluation without permanent commitment." "It's also unprecedented," countered Representative Cole. "No species has ever been offered provisional membership. No species has ever developed faster-than-light travel in under 2 centuries of spaceflight either," Iris shot back. "We're kind of used to doing things differently. Makes life interesting." Zara's facial plates shifted into what might have been a smile. "I like this human. She has spine." "More importantly," Iris continued, "this protects everyone. If we mess up during the trial period, you can cut us loose. If we succeed, you get a committed ally with useful technology and a proven track record. And if you decide during those 5 cycles that you want to terminate early, we've included a withdrawal clause with 3-month notice period. Everyone maintains flexibility." Vekthar reviewed the proposed framework on his datapad. It was remarkably thorough for something she'd apparently just conceived, unless she'd been planning this contingency all along. Which, knowing what he'd learned about Iris Callahan over the past 30 hours, seemed entirely possible. "The commander will need time to consult with the full council," Kip said, his gills finally showing signs of calming. "Of course, but I meant what I said about my transport schedule. I need an answer within 12 hours, or I'm heading home and we'll try again next cycle." "You would walk away from this opportunity?" Threll asked, incredulous. "I'd walk away from a bad deal, yes. My government sent me here to negotiate membership, not to accept whatever terms you dictate. If the Council isn't ready to work with humanity as equals, even provisional equals, then there's no point continuing." The ultimatum hung in the air like ozone before a lightning strike. Vekthar found himself in an impossible position. The humans' proposal was reasonable, arguably generous, but 12 hours wasn't enough time to properly consult with thousands of council members across hundreds of worlds. Then again, that might be exactly the point. Force a decision based on merit rather than endless political maneuvering. "Miss Callahan, the Council does not respond well to pressure." "I'm not pressuring anyone, Commander. I'm managing my time. There's a difference. You've got 12 hours to decide if you want to work with humanity. If yes, great. If no, also fine. But I'm not going to sit here for 3 months while various delegations argue about comma placement in subsection 4012. She had a point. Council negotiations did tend to drag on interminably. "Very well," Vekthar said, making a decision that would either secure his legacy or end his career. "I will present your proposal to the Emergency Council Assembly. We will convene within 6 hours and deliver our decision in 12. But I make no promises about the outcome." "Fair enough. That's all I'm asking for." Iris extended her hand again in that human gesture. "Thank you for taking this seriously, Commander. I know I've been difficult." He took her hand, careful not to squeeze too hard. "Difficult, yes, but also effective. You've advanced these negotiations more in 30 hours than most delegations manage in 6 months. That's either a compliment to me or an indictment of your usual process. Perhaps both." She smiled. A real smile this time, not the dangerous one. "I like you, Commander. You're practical. Practical people get things done." After Iris left to rest before the final session, Vekthar collapsed into his chair. Zara remained, along with a handful of other delegates who'd stayed for the entire marathon negotiation. "What do you think?" the general asked. "I think that Human is the most exhausting person I've ever negotiated with." "That was not my question." Vekthar sighed, a long whistling sound through his breathing slits. "I think she's right. About all of it. We are afraid of what humanity might become. We do want them integrated while they're still young enough to be influenced by Council values. And we have been stalling because we don't want to commit. So you will recommend approval? I will recommend the trial membership. It gives us exactly what we need. Time to assess whether humans can function within our framework, and an exit strategy if they can't." He looked at the general. "The real question is whether the Council will have the courage to say yes." The emergency assembly convened 4 hours later. Vekthar presented Iris's proposal to 3,000 delegates representing 800 species. The debate was predictably chaotic. Some called it innovative. Others called it dangerous. A few called it insulting that humanity thought they could dictate terms. But slowly, gradually, a consensus emerged. The trial period addressed too many concerns to dismiss. And the alternative, having humanity as an unaligned power in Council space, growing more capable every cycle, was increasingly unpalatable. The vote came down to margins. 62% in favor, 38% opposed or abstaining. It passed. Vekthar returned to the conference room where Iris waited, looking surprisingly awake for someone who'd slept maybe 4 hours in the past 2 days. "Well?" she asked. "The Council accepts your proposal. Trial membership, 5 cycles, with all conditions as specified. Congratulations, Miss Callahan. Humanity is now provisionally part of the Galactic Council." For the first time since arriving, Iris Callahan looked genuinely surprised. "Seriously? They actually said yes?" "Do not make me regret this decision by expressing shock." She laughed, actually laughed, a sound of pure relief and joy. Sorry. It's just, I was maybe 70% sure this would work. Had a whole backup plan ready if you said no." "What was the backup plan?" "Come back next cycle with a different approach. Persistence is key." She stood and offered her hand one final time. "Thank you, Commander, for giving us a chance. We won't waste it." "See that you don't. Because if humanity fails this trial period, it will be centuries before the Council considers membership again." "Understood. No pressure." Her smile suggested she thrived on pressure. As she gathered her belongings and prepared to depart, Vekthar found himself asking the question that had nagged at him throughout the negotiations. "Miss Callahan, why did your government really send only you? The truth this time." She paused at the door and looked back. "Because they knew what you expected. A delegation, lots of people, traditional negotiation tactics. And they figured the best way to get your attention was to do the complete opposite. Send one person who could cut through the bureaucracy and speak plainly. Someone expendable if it went badly, but effective if it went well. Expendable? I'm a freelancer, Commander. I don't officially represent Earth government. If I'd failed spectacularly, they could have disavowed me and tried again with someone else. If I succeeded, which I did, they get what they want. She shrugged. It's actually pretty clever when you think about it. Your people used you. My people gave me an opportunity to make history. I took it. No regrets. She tapped the door control. Besides, I negotiated a pretty substantial bonus if I pulled this off. I'm buying a ship with the payout. Maybe do some trading in council space, now that we're members. You're incorrigible. I'm human, Commander. We're all a little incorrigible. You'd better get used to it. And with that, Iris Callahan walked out, pulling her wheeled case behind her, leaving Vecthar to wonder what exactly the Galactic Council had just agreed to. 3 cycles later, Vecthar received a message from Earth. Humanity had successfully integrated Council medical technology into their healthcare systems, reducing mortality rates by 18%. They'd also established cultural exchange programs with 6 species, opened trade routes with 12 more, and somehow convinced the notoriously isolationist Velux to attend a joint scientific symposium. The same Velux they'd accidentally insulted with corpse flowers. Attached to the report was a personal note from Iris Callahan. It read, "Told you we were good at making up for mistakes. Thanks for believing in us. The universe just got a lot more interesting." Vecthar filed the report and allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. Perhaps humans were exactly what the Council needed. A reminder that rules existed to serve purpose, not the other way around. That boldness had value. That sometimes the best way forward was to stop overthinking and just move. Of course, there were still 2 cycles left in the trial period. Plenty of time for humanity to do something catastrophically stupid. But somehow, Vecthar suspected that even if they did, they'd find a way to fix it. Probably while making friends with whoever they'd accidentally offended in the process. It was exhausting just thinking about it. Also strangely hopeful. The galaxy had just gotten a lot more complicated. But maybe, just maybe, that wasn't such a bad thing after all.